King of Fighters 95 was the second game in the King of Fighters series produced by SNK for the Neo Geo arcade and home console. It is also the first game in the series to be ported to any other system besides the Neo Geo AES and the Geo CD. Unlike the Marvel Capcom games, the teams in the King of Fighters 95 cannot be switched between on the fly. This may seem ridiculous to some, but remember, back in 1995 when this was released, being able to make a team in a one-on-one fighter was quite a new concept. The King of Fighters 95 project began with the concept of introducing Iori Yagami as Kyo Kusanagi's rival. As such, developers gave him traits to expand that relationship, such as similar abilities and ancient rivalry between both of their clans. During the initial location tests to determine the popularity of the game, Iori was the character who stood out most, also becoming a favourite with the developers. The creation of the rival teams was one of the things developers worked on the hardest.
Ready, go! Yuri vs. Kim. Ready, go!
Many of you may think that the Neo Geo CD port is identical to its arcade big brother, but the truth is that it's missing animation in areas. The first thing you'll notice is that during the character order screen, the Neo CD port doesn't animate your characters, unlike the arcade version. Also, I don't know if it's just by chance, but some winning poses may be missing. This may be just an unlucky streak I had while playing. For example, Ryo never ripped his top off in the Neo CD version when I won a match, although he did quite a bit in the arcade version. But like I said, this may be just a random winning pose thing. Something that not everyone will appreciate is the new CD soundtrack. The Neo Geo has fantastic chip music, so I personally never liked the way many Neo CD games had their soundtracks ruined. But hey, that's just my opinion. What everybody will hate though are the loading times. They're awful. For example, loading between characters takes 7 seconds, while loading in a new stage takes 20 seconds. Now there's no beating around the bush that the PlayStation port of the King of Fighters 95 is missing character animation and suffers from low quality sound effects and speech samples. But it's not as bad as you may think. Looking at the PlayStation port in action, we can see that it still looks nice. The graphics are detailed and still contain a healthy amount of animation for the players, as well as the backgrounds looking pretty much arcade perfect. Gameplay modes mimic those found in the Neo Geo CD, plus there's also a private mode, in which you can read about every character in the game. Not a great bonus, but still a little something for the fans. So how about loading? Well, unfortunately the PlayStation sucks when it comes to loading. Not as bad as the Neo Geo CD, mind you, but still annoying. Especially between character changes. Something else that may annoy some is the arranged soundtrack, which is taken directly from the Neo Geo CD port. Some love it, while others hate it. The Saturn port was at the time the best way to play the King of Fighters at home without spending a small fortune. This version is practically perfect apart from one or two animation frames here and there that only the true hardcore player would notice. The game does lack the animated characters on the order select screen, just like the Neo Geo CD and PlayStation, but apart from that, there's not much to hate on. Loading is much faster than the other two CD ports, and the speech samples are on par with the Neo CD version. This version of the game doesn't make use of any Saturn RAM cartridge either. So how does it manage to keep everything right? Well, the game comes on a combination of ROM cartridge and CD. All the character sprites and animation frames are stored on the ROM cartridge, which can be accessed lightning quick. All the stages are stored on the CD. This is also why the game can load fairly quickly. Oh, and fans of game music will be happy to know that this version features the original arcade music, and it doesn't restart between every round unlike other systems. King of Fighters 95 can be found for the PlayStation 2 on the Orochi Saga Collection, which also includes the King of Fighters 94, 96, 97, and 98, if you buy the US release. The Japanese original release only contains the King of Fighters 95, 96, and 97, but does include the option of arranged soundtracks for each game and online play. As for the port of 95, well, it's pretty much identical to the original Neo Geo AES release. The only real difference are the short loading screens and the way the music fades in and out between scenes. The PS2 ports are probably the most impressive, but make sure you use anything besides the official PS2 pads. They're just awful for fighting games. And let's finish up with something a little fun. This is the Game Boy version of the King of Fighters 95, which goes under the name of Netto King of Fighters 95. Now obviously we can't take this as a series port, so let's look at it in regards to a handheld one-on-one fighter. Now back when this was released, most handheld fighting games were awful, apart from the Neo Geo Pocket. I'm happy to say that this Game Boy game is also pretty good. It features a wide selection of characters, each of which retain the majority of their moves. Gameplay elements such as dodging projectile attacks is still intact, which is surprising. The characters even have their super moves. Gameplay modes are similar to those found in the home consoles too, such as team or single gameplay modes. All in all, Netto the King of Fighters 95 on the Game Boy is quite a fun little game. And let's take a look at all those versions of the King of Fighters 95 running side by side.